Welcome to the big one, the 2023 Desert Race, or by its full name, the TGRSA 1000 Kalahari Botswana Desert Race. For 2023, the race was back in Botswana, and more specifically back in the area surrounding the southern mining town of Jwaneng. As ever, the action is brought to you by Toyota, Ford and Pirelli. Welcome to Botswana and round 3 of the 2023 South African Rally Raid Series, or SARRC for short. This is the crown jewel in the season and the only marathon event on the calendar. At 1,000 kilometers in length over a period of 3 days, the TGRSA 1000 Kalahari Botswana Desert Race is most likely the longest and toughest motorsport event on the African continent. And in terms of spectator turnout, also by far the biggest. For sponsors Toyota, this is a must-win race. And the defending champion for the Desert Race is Janelle de Villiers, who triumphed in Upington when the race was hosted there in 2022. But now the race was back in Botswana, in the area surrounding Jwaneng to be precise. And conditions here are somewhat special. The terrain is unforgiving, the spectators are relentless, and reaching the end unscathed is unheard of. Welcome to the 3-day, 1,000 kilometer long Desert Race, back in Jwaneng for the first time since 2018. The race HQ and DSP was again set at the Jwaneng Sports Ground to the north of the town itself. And with additional points on offer, the Desert Race was again the one that everyone wanted to win. We caught up with the hosting team principal, TGRSA's Glenn Hall, to get his take on the upcoming Desert Race.
Well, I think it's great to be back here in Jwaneng. We've got some proper sand roads and tracks and a lot of different terrain.
With that as background, let's take a look at the action, starting with Class T1. The battle for Class T1 honours has become a bloody affair, with defending champion Eben Besson finding himself somewhat on the back foot in defence of his title. As a matter of fact, the man topping the charts after 2 rounds was former motorbike racer Nick Pienaar, now campaigning a red-line Revo. Pienaar finished second at the opening event and followed this with a win at round 2. But more than that, he has also triumphed at the desert in the past, on 2 wheels rather than 4. His good form put him 12 points ahead in the standings, and we caught up with the man himself prior to the start of the Desert Race.
Yeah, pressure's on, not just for me, for the guys chasing their championship as well.
It's easy to drive for a finish when you have a 12-point buff over defending champion Besson, who would have to fend off a hard-charging Johannes Brain just 2 points back in second place. Bashir Blickno and Jaden Els rounded out the top 5 in Class 1. The Pirelli qualifier for the Desert Race took place over a distance of 60 kilometers, with the cars setting off 3 minutes apart. The purpose of the qualifying race is to determine the starting positions for the main event, and as such it plays a pivotal role in the outcome of the race. As is customary, the qualifying race took in a portion of the main race loop, but with a significantly reduced distance. As we said before, the fight in Class 1 is a tight affair, and the Desert Race proved to be no exception. A few of the regular contenders like Jaden Els, partnered with Alvin Fonk, as well as Donnie Schroeder, partnered with Ryan Bland, experienced some challenges along the way. But in the end, the top 5 emerged from the Kalahari dust. Dutch youngster Pim Klaassen may be only 19 years of age, but despite this being only his first foray in Botswana, he and co-driver Wade Harris posted the 5th fastest time, trailing the winners by just under 2.5 minutes. They were pipped to the finish by championship leaders Nick Pienaar and his co-driver Carl Swanepoel, who pegged a time some 17 seconds faster than the Dutchman. Ahead of Pienaar and Swanepoel came round 1 winners Johannes Brain and co-driver Gerard Skitter, who trailed Johan and Sean van Staden driving a Renault Duster, home by less than 2 minutes. The Van Stadens went second fastest in the Pirelli qualifying race, clearly showing their class. But the man of the moment was defending class champion Eben Besson, with Leander Papies Pienaar beside him in the Team Hilux car. The pair posted a time of 36 minutes and 55 seconds in the qualifying race, pipping the father and son Van Staden pairing by exactly 1 minute. We caught up with Besson following his win in the qualifying race.
We're definitely comfortable here, and it's special to be back here. I missed the terrain, and I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. Eben really went well today.
And here's confirmation: Basson and Skitter's win, followed by the Van Stadens in second and De Bruyn in third. De Bruyn was the first of 3 consecutive redlined motorsport cars, with Nick Pienaar and Carl Swanepoel in fourth, and Pim Klaasen and Wade Harris in fifth. But that was only the qualifying part of the feared desert race, the first 60 kilometers. More than 900 still remained, and at 8:30 on the Saturday morning of the race, the flag was waved to set them off on the first of the day's racing loops to the south and east of the mining town. As the fastest Class T1 qualifiers, the Team Hilux Rally Raid squad of Eben Basson and Leander Pienaar were in perfect position to set the Class T1 pace from behind the wheel of their Hilux, with the rest of the field keeping them firmly in their sights. 19-year-old Dutch driver Pim Klaasen and Wade Harris were the first victims when they were forced to the sidelines in their redline VK50. Another redline car did, however, make it to the end of the day in the hands of relative newcomers Rudy and Gerard Heinlein, who were classified last at the halfway mark. And what about our championship points leaders Nick Pienaar and Carl Swanepoel? Well, things didn't quite go according to plan for this pairing either. The Redline Revo crew were stuck in dust for most of the day and suffered multiple flat tyres as a result, relegating them to 7th in class at the end of the Saturday. They were overtaken by the hard-charging brother pairing of Fischer and Bertus Blickno, who had to fight their way open from behind after not completing the qualifying race the day before in their Team Hilux Rally Raid Hilux. They ended the day 4 minutes ahead of Pienaar and around 6 minutes behind the current 5th place crew of Daniel Schroeder and Ryan Bland in their Nissan Navara, with the German driver clearly still enjoying his regular visits to Southern Africa. Although the race was only at the halfway mark, we were still nearing the business end of the field in the highly competitive Class T1, with 4 more crews all competing for potential podium spots. One such crew is the very talented young Jaden Els and experienced Alvin Fonk in the King Price Extreme SVR. The youngster overcame a number of issues and even drove in 2-wheel drive for most of the day, but still managed to climb the leaderboard up into 4th position at the end of the day. Keeping them off the podium for now were round 1 winners Johan De Bruyn and Gerard Skitter in the Redline Revo. It's only De Bruyn's 2nd year in the sport and his first visit to Botswana. But the Pretoria-based businessman is highly competitive and was doing a good job at the front of the field. There was, however, a little daylight between De Bruyn in 3rd and the 2 crews who were fighting for the lead. On this occasion, stalwart Johan van Staden with the son Sean reading the notes proved that experience counts for a lot in these trying conditions. The veteran driver had a relatively clean run in his Renault Duster to complete the tough first half of the desert race in a very credible 2nd position and in a great spot to try and fight for victory over the remaining half of the race. But it would take a mammoth effort to take on the crew that was leading at this point. The crew in question, current Class T1 champions Eben Basson and Leander Pienaar. The Team Hilux Rally Raid squad completed the day with a 4-minute advantage over the Van Stadens, and that despite having fuel pump issues and stopping twice to replace flat tyres on the first of the day's racing loops. And there it is, confirmation of the brutal battle in Class T1, with Basson and Pienaar currently topping the standings ahead of the Van Stadens and the hard-charging De Bruyn and Skitter, who in turn had a determined young Jaden Els hot on their heels. Next up, let's take a look at Class T, which may be a bit more compact in terms of competitors, but as with any class, it remains highly competitive. After the opening 2 rounds of the 2023 SARRC season, it was Ford driver Hendrik Du Plessis who topped the standings. He was just 5 points ahead of Scout Burger.
First and foremost, we have to finish the event, so that's the main aim. As I can see, the bush looks like very thick and the sand thick, so I think it's going to be a rough one.
In the end, 3 Class T cars took the starters' orders in Joaneng, with Du Plessis squaring up with Scout Burger and co-driver Henk Janssen van Vieren, as well as Bernard and Minette Johnston. But the Johnstons had a tough outing during the Pirelli qualifier, bringing their car home dead last. As for Du Plessis and Berg, it was a tight battle, but in the end, it was championship leader Du Plessis who emerged victorious, albeit by only 3 seconds. Still, the stopwatch doesn't lie, and when the results were published, it was Du Plessis who came out on top.
But it was very fun, very fast, and they did a great job on the route.
What a fight it was, with more on the cards for the main event. Here's confirmation of Du Plessis pipping Berger by the smallest of margins. The Johnstons would start in 3rd place race with a deficit that all but removed them from the running. Unfortunately for the Johnstons, they didn't bother the scorers as they failed to reach the finish of the Saturday's racing, leaving it up to Skalk Berger and Henk Janssen van Vieren to fight it out with the father and son pairing of Hendrik and Heinrich du Plessis for Class T honours. The two crews started the day just 3 seconds apart, but the seconds soon turned into minutes thanks to the relentless African bush that started to take its toll on the crews. The King Price Extreme Volkswagen Amarok Berger suffered from a few technical niggles as well as a few punctured tyres, leaving the du Plessis pairing clear at the head of the Class T field to reach the halfway mark of the coveted desert race in their Ford Ranger. The gap was 31 minutes between Class T leader du Plessis, with Berger thankful for reaching the halfway mark of this extremely tough race. And yet, they still had a long way to go. Next up, the lads in Class G of the SARRC. These side-by-side machines offer highly competitive racing and deceptive pace, and the leading pack was split by just 12 points coming into round 3. The man at the head of that pack was Ewald van Rensburg, with young Ian Mostert in second place. Mostert Jr. is now driving his dad around. Van Mostert is himself a multiple former Class G champion and is now reading the notes for his son. But the pair would have to dig deep in order to make up ground to the leader.
He's teaching me a lot about his driving. He was national champion a few times, so he has a lot of knowledge about driving.
While Mostert Jr. would be spending time with his dad, Van Rensburg would be aiming to make hay while the sun shines and build up a lead at the head of the field. Behind the two leaders, Glenn Theron would be hoping to close the 6-point gap to Mostert and possibly even overtake him in the title race. Jeff Minnaert and Francois de Witt rounded out the top 5 after 2 rounds. But racing is seldom a straightforward business, and as much as the top 3 would have liked to battle it out amongst themselves, it was Minnaert and new co-driver Rodney Mumblesberg who set the fastest time over the Pirelli qualifying race. The pair posted a time of 43 minutes and 23 seconds, putting them 1 minute and 5 seconds ahead of the second place crew of Ewald van Rensburg and Johan Schippers. The championship leaders were 28 seconds faster than Francois de Witt and co-driver Pierre Jordan in third place, with Glenn Theron and Craig Galvin bringing their Can-Am Maverick home in fourth. The Mosterts rounded up the top 5, but the man with the biggest smile after the qualifying race in Trondheim was undeniably Jeff Minnaert.
We had such fun in the car. It was absolutely fantastic. Wonderful day.
And here's confirmation of Minnaert and Berg's win in Class G, with Van Rensburg and Schippers in second and de Witt and Jordan in third. Theron and Galvin went 4th fastest, with the Mostert pairing rounding out the top 5. Ahead of these Mavericks in the side-by-side class were 2 full days and nearly 1,000 kilometers throughout the dense African bush. It was a tough ask, and perhaps a little too tough as soon as the 7 Class G starters were reduced to just 4. The Mosterts, with son Ian doing the driving duties, had a tough day and accepted a 10-hour penalty for not completing the full route. But the Motonetics Racing Can-Am was at least classified 4th in class. They would, however, not take part in the fight for the podium, as this fight consisted of championship points leader Ewald van Rensburg and Johan Schippers, Glenn Theron and Craig Galvin, and Jeff Minnaert in a minute and Rodney Berg. When the flag was waved to signal the end of Saturday's racing, there was nothing that Van Rensburg and Schippers could do to improve on their 3rd place standings, as the gap between themselves and the 2nd place Motonetics Racing Can-Am of Theron and Galvin had grown to around 13 minutes. Even so, both crews were happy to reach the halfway mark unscathed, but not as happy as Jeff Minnaert and Rodney Berg. The veteran navigator turned driver started from pole position and extended his lead over the first 500 kilometers of the race. Minnaert in a minute was happy, to say the least, without really knowing the standings just seconds after getting out of the car.
We sun's up, we finished. It's fun.
Minnaert's lead was nearly 17 minutes in the hydropower equipment Can-Am, with Theron and Galvin occupying second at this part of the race, and Van Rensburg and Schippers completing the provisional podium. Tim House is the defending champion Class A of the SARRC, where massive open-wheel cars do battle. This is yet another highly competitive class with a host of experienced crews fielding some truly monstrous equipment. After 2 rounds of the 2023 season, Howes and co-driver Gary Campbell found themselves in the lead of the title chase, with Trace Price-Moore in 2nd place and Eugene Bierman in 3rd. Loet de Preer was in 4th and John Thompson rounded out the top 5. We had a quick chat with Haas before he set off for the qualifying race in Zhuhai.
We're just out here to have fun. We are leading the championship, but that's sort of in the back of our minds. We just got to get to the finish.
7 Class A machines took the starters' orders at the 2023 TGRSA 1000 Desert Race, and it was clear from the get-go that a tight battle was on the cards. And so it was when less than 5 minutes separated the top 5 crews after the completion of the Pirelli qualifying race. They were just over a minute and a half adrift of 4th place crew Eugene Bierman and Peter Visser in their Bat Spec 2. This left the top 3, who were split by only 15 seconds after 60 kilometers of frantic racing. Defending champs Howes and Campbell found themselves at the back of the 3 leading crews, trailing Loet, Dupree and Junior Vardy by just 7 seconds. Dupree and Vardy in turn were just 8 seconds behind the leaders, despite a spirited drive on the day. And the leaders, none other than the experienced crew of John Thompson and Maurice Matten in their fearsome Zarco Challenger.
But let me tell you, I was on the money today and I really enjoyed this route.
And here are the numbers. Thompson had a slender lead over Dupree, with Howes in 3rd. 4th place belonged to Eugene Bierman, with Mohamed Noor rounding out the top 5. Clearly a tough battle was on the cards for the main event. Unfortunately for a number of the crews, the battle proved a little too tough, with the Kalahari quickly claiming a number of Class A special vehicle victims early on. The Lesotho crew of Andrew Makanetti and Ntowete Bareng were forced to park their Bat Macmobile, while Eugene Bierman and Peter Visser suffered the same fate in their Bat Spec 2. But the biggest disappointment must have been the moment that Class A champions Tim Howes and Gary Campbell's race came to an abrupt end when their Bat Spec 4 ran out of fuel in the thick Kalahari sand. This allowed Loet, Dupree and Junior Vardy to cruise to a comfortable 2nd place at the midway point behind the wheel of their Farmers Meat Striker. But they were a long way off the Class A lead, which in this case belonged to special vehicle stalwarts John Thompson and Maurice Matten in their trusty Zarco Challenger. The Swaziland-based veteran lost some time due to mechanical issues, but kept their noses clean to claim the halfway mark lead.
It was just a gamble. We pushed hard and we were very lucky.
A more than comfortable lead for the Swazi-based driver Thompson over his nearest rival Dupree in Class A of the special vehicle category. Quinton Lessing and Brandon Smith were the only ones to reach the halfway mark in Class P. This brings us to the big boys, the men campaigning in Class T1 Plus of the SARRC. This is the rarefied air where the best of the best strut their stuff, and where the battle between Toyota and Ford rages as fierce as ever. With 2 rounds behind us, it was Henk Lategan who found himself back in familiar territory at the head of the standings. But this was the desert race, and even Lategan knew it would be a tough fight to the checkered flag.
Previous years when we've come here, I've always had some sort of issue, so hopefully this year we can clean it up a bit and get to the finish with a strong one.
He'd have to keep an eye on his teammate Janelle de Villiers, who was the last winner of a desert race, even though that race took place in Uppington rather than Botswana.
It was actually amazing, after 1,000 k's to win the race by 6 seconds, it's quite amazing.
De Villiers was the second member of the 4-car TGRSA Hilux squad, which also included Guy Bottrell and Simon Vasey-Lyle reading the notes, and rookie Sahud Variawa, with experienced co-driver Donnie Stassen on the book. Variawa currently leads the SA GTC Championship on track for TGRSA, and while he had raced in regional cross-country events in the recent past, this would be his baptism of fire on the national SARRC circuit. Behind the TGRSA crews, the men in blue would offer a creditable threat to Toyota's dominance, but it would be a tough ask, as the Woolridge brothers explained.
Racing point of view, it's really exciting. There's a hell of a lot of the field that hasn't raced here before. So yeah, looking forward to it.
We know that Toyotas are strong in the sand given their Dakar background, so it's going to be a tough challenge, but I'm really hopeful we can at least keep them under pressure and fight them to the end.
Looking at the standings, it was Lategan in the lead with Gareth Woolridge and de Villiers tied for 2nd place. Bottrell was 11 points further back, with Chris Fiss in the first of the Redline Revo machines rounding out the top 5 on 32 points. With the scene set, it was time for the big cheeses of the SARRC to get going in Zhuhai. And boy, did they get going. Let's put things into perspective here. The top 10 crews were separated by just 3 minutes after the first 60 kilometers. And the slowest crew from that bunch was Johan and Van der Horn, who are everything but slow. Even so, the Team Hilux pairing went 10th fastest, with Gary Berthold and Henry Cohn going one better in their Toyota Hilux. Christopher and Blikkies Venter were 8th fastest on the day, pipping Berthold by just 29 seconds. But Vos Prinsloo and Andre Vermeulen, now also in the big leagues, went one better to take 7th place. De Villiers and co-driver Dennis Murphy found themselves mid-pack in 6th, with Gareth Woolridge and Boyd Dreyer breaking into the top 5 in their NWM Ford Castrol Ranger. But ahead of Woolridge and Dreyer came a veritable sea of red, as 3 TGRSA crews occupied positions 2, 3 and 4. 4th place belonged to Guy Bottrell and Simon Vasey-Lyle, while championship leaders Henk Lategan and Brett Cummins brought their GRDKR Hilux T1 Plus home in 3rd place. Which meant that 2nd place went to none other than SARRC rookie Sahud Variawa and co-driver Donnie Stassen, the 17-year-old giving many of the older, more established competitors a bloody nose in the process. But the man at the head of the field, resplendent in blue, was Lance Woolridge and co-driver Kenny Gilbert. The lad from Pietermaritzburg set a time of 35 minutes and 10 seconds, beating Variawa and Stassen by just 2 seconds. A power performance clearly showing Ford's intent to upset Toyota's apple cart in Zhuaneng.
But yeah, super proud today, and just thanks to the team for all their support and all the hard work they've been putting in.
And here are the numbers. After 60 kilometers of racing, it was Woolridge who led from Variawa, with Lategan in 3rd and Bottrell in 4th. Brother Gareth was in 5th, followed by De Villiers in 6th, Prinsloo in 7th and Fiss in 8th. Berthold was in 9th, while Horn rounded out the highly competitive top 10. And this was it. Race day for the big boys and the big cars on the Fiat Desert Race. But first things first, the starting order. The Pirelli qualifying race is followed by a starting position draw for the main race, and on this occasion, it was Janelle De Villiers who drew the short straw and ended up with the unenviable task of opening the road. On 8:30 on the Saturday morning, it was go time in Zhuaneng when De Villiers dropped the hammer from inside the TGRSA Hilux. He was followed by the first of the NWM Ford Castrol Team Rangers in the hands of Gareth Woolridge and Boyd Dreyer. And 2 more Toyotas driven by Guy Bottrell and Simon Vasey-Lyle, and pre-race favourites Henk Lategan and Brett Cummins. The second Ford of Lance Woolridge and Kenny Gilbert started from 5th on the road. Opening the road on the desert race is near impossible, as in some sections there are no roads. And you're also the first to encounter the thousands of fanatical Botswana spectators who line the route, making it even more difficult to find your way. But this is all part of the character of the desert race. De Villiers soon struggled and got passed by Gareth Woolridge and later also by his teammate Henk Lategan. In fact, with a few hundred kilometers under the belt, Lategan was topping the timesheets with a bit of a gap over the feisty Fords of both Lance and Gareth Woolridge. This is how they reached the DSP for a much-needed service, with youngster Sahud Variawa and Donnie Stassen reaching Zhuaneng with the 4th fastest time. Let's hear from them.
It's so difficult to keep it clean. It's millimeters, and then you get a puncture or you take a wheel off or you're stuck next to the road.
Like I said, we're not here to win or anything. We're just here to finish, and we're trying to do that.
That's how the Saturday race started for some of the runners. So let's cast our mind forward to how the first half of the race ended for the crews in the Premier Class T1 Plus. Vos Prinsloo and Andre Vermeulen had a great qualifying in their newly built Ford Ranger. But unfortunately for the man from Ermelo, a small teething problem forced them to the sidelines. The same fate befell the popular Horn brothers from Malalan, who also failed to reach Zhuaneng at the end of the day's racing. Veteran and rally raid stalwart and former winner of this race, Christopher and navigator Blikkies Venter, did make it back to Zhuaneng, but the Freiburg farmer endured a tough day that included losing power steering early on in the Redline Revo. As a result, they were only 9th fastest. 8th, however, was only 33 seconds up the road, and that position belonged to Dewald from Bredaan's Scoopy Maynard in the CR6. The big car was struggling on the narrow roads in between the dense bush, and Van Breda was no doubt looking forward to the more open spaces in store on the Sunday of the event. Gary Berthold and Henry Cohn completed the Saturday's nearly 500 kilometers in a very respectable 7th position in class, with the veteran setting himself up nicely for an early birthday present. Sahud Variawa and Donnie Stassen started the race like a bat out of hell, but the youngsters' baptism of fire included 3 flat tires that relegated them to 6th in class. Yet it was enough to showcase his pace. Meanwhile, De Villiers and Murphy, who started the day from first on the road, had a tough time with finding the road and 2 separate flat tyres. The legendary driver was thus beaten to the Saturday flag by his teammates Bottrell and Vasey Lyle, who were both fast and consistent, and that was good enough for an overnight 4th position on the leaderboard. And this left us with 3, Lartigan and Toyota versus the 2 Fords of the Woolridge brothers. Lartigan managed to edge out a little lead with some distance to go, but then it struck. Some called it the sponsor's curse. It basically says that someone driving a sponsor's car in a sponsor's event often runs into bad luck. We simply call it racing. And on this day, the TGRSA Hilux driver had to stop to repair a drive shaft and change a few flat tyres. And that was the only invitation the NWM Ford Castrol Rangers needed. The men in blue were fast and furious throughout the African bush and reached the safety of the Zwaneng Service Park while occupying the top 2 positions on the leaderboard. Lance was ahead for most of the day, but a power steering problem near the end saw him concede the lead to his brother Gareth. Confirmation of the boys in blue leading the famous TGRSA 1000 Kalahari Botswana Desert Race, followed by no less than 4 Toyotas in the form of Lartigan, Bottrell, De Villiers and youngster Variawa. This is what the guys at the sharp end of the field had to say after the first half of the 2023 Desert Race.
It was really, really tough. Our steering pump is all but gone, so I really had to fight the steering.
The drive shaft came out and went into the wheel, so it caused a puncture as well, so we had a flat tyre to change.
This was just the opening days of the 2023 TGRSA 1000 Kalahari Botswana race. Another full day of racing remained, with plenty of stories to tell. Join us again next week as we pick up where we left off in the biggest race of the year. All the action from this week's episode, as well as the one to come, was brought to you by Toyota, Ford and Pirelli.